The morning sky over Kepler 442b turned dark as massive ships blocked out the sun. Jake Morrison stood at his office window and watched the alien fleet take position above their small mining colony. He had been the colony administrator for 3 years, and this was definitely not in his job description. "Sir, they're jamming all our communications," said Danny Ross, the security chief, bursting through the door. "We can't reach Earth or any of the other colonies." Jake nodded slowly. He had expected this. The fleet was huge, easily 50 ships, each one larger than anything humans had ever built. The aliens had clearly come for war, not conversation. "How many people do we have?" Jake asked. 2,012, including the kids, Danny replied. "Most are miners and their families. I've got maybe 30 people with any military training." Through the window, they watched the first alien ships descend toward the surface. The vessels were sleek and dark, moving with deadly grace. Jake had read about first contact scenarios in training, but none of the books had prepared him for this feeling in his stomach. The first bombs fell 20 minutes later. The aliens targeted the power plant, the communication center, and the small spaceport, where 3 cargo ships sat helplessly. The explosions were precise and clean, designed to cripple rather than destroy completely. Jake realized the aliens wanted the colony intact, probably for themselves. "They're not trying to kill us all," he told Danny as they watched the smoke. "Hars. They want us to surrender." Danny grinned, and Jake was surprised to see excitement in the man's eyes instead of fear. "Well, that's their first mistake." The alien ground forces landed 2 hours after the bombing. Jake watched from the emergency bunker as strange, tall creatures in powered armor marched through the streets. They moved like soldiers, disciplined and confident. Their leader, a particularly large alien with elaborate markings on his armor, set up a command post in the town square. Pete Garcia, the head mining foreman, arrived at the bunker covered in dust and grinning like a madman. "Jake, you're not going to believe what I found in the equipment yard." "What are you talking about, Pete?" "The aliens didn't hit the mining equipment. We've got industrial lasers, earth movers, drilling rigs, all kinds of heavy machinery. And I've been thinking..." Pete's eyes lit up. Those mining lasers could punch through just about anything. Dr. Lisa Wong appeared behind Pete, her medical coat torn, but her expression determined. "The hospital took some damage, but it's still functional. I've moved all the critical patients to the basement levels. The kids are helping me set up a proper trauma center down there." Jake stared at them both. The colony was under attack by superior alien forces. Their communications were cut, and they had no hope of rescue. Yet his people seemed almost energized by the situation. "You realize we're probably going to die, right?" Jake said. Lisa shrugged. "Maybe. But we've survived. Dust storms, equipment failures, food shortages, and that terrible winter when the heating systems broke. This is just another problem to solve." Over the next few days, Jake watched in amazement as his colonists adapted to their new reality. Amy Carter, the schoolteacher, turned her classroom into a planning center where children drew maps of alien patrol routes. The kids seemed to treat the whole thing like an elaborate game of hide-and-seek. Carlos Rivera, the colony botanist, started planting tomatoes in the crater where the power plant used to be. When Jake asked him why, Carlos just smiled and said, "We're going to be here for a while. Might as well make it nice." The aliens seemed confused by the human response. Jake could see them through binoculars, standing in groups and apparently arguing among themselves. Their leader, the one with the fancy armor, kept pointing at different parts of the colony as if he couldn't understand what he was seeing. Maria Santos, who ran the colony kitchen, somehow managed to keep cooking meals. For everyone, she set up outdoor grills using scavenged materials and served hot food to anyone who wanted it, including the work crews who were busy turning their homes into fortresses. "It's important to keep everyone fed," she explained to Jake. "Hungry people make bad decisions." Frank Butler, the chief mechanic, had been busy studying pieces of alien technology that fell from damaged ships. "Their stuff isn't that different from ours," he reported. "Different materials, but the basic principles are the same. I think I can figure out how some of it works." Danny Ross organized the defense efforts with the enthusiasm of someone planning a community festival. He assigned everyone tasks based on their skills, turning accountants into lookouts and teachers into tactical coordinators. The former soldiers trained anyone who wanted to learn how to fight, but most people seemed more interested in learning how to hide, repair, and rebuild. The breaking point came on the fourth day. The alien leader, clearly frustrated by the lack of surrender, ordered a demonstration of force. His soldiers surrounded the main residential area and began powering up their weapons. Jake expected panic. Instead, he watched through his binoculars as something incredible happened. The colonists came out of their houses. All of them. Men, women, children, elderly folks, everyone. They stood in their yards and on their porches, looking calmly at the alien soldiers. Nobody ran. Nobody screamed. They just stood there waiting. Amy Carter's voice carried across the settlement as she called out to her students. Remember what we talked about in class. Stand up straight, look them in the eyes, and don't be afraid. The children obeyed, standing, beside their parents with the same calm determination. For several long minutes, humans and aliens stared at each other across the dusty streets. The alien soldiers shifted nervously, clearly not prepared for this reaction. Their weapons remained charged, but nobody fired. Finally, the alien leader barked an order in his own language, and his troops lowered their weapons. The demonstration was over, but Jake could see that something had changed. The aliens no longer moved with the same confidence. That evening, as Jake walked through the settlement checking on his people, he found families cooking dinner on portable stoves outside their damaged homes. Children played games in the rubble while their parents worked on repairs. Someone had set up speakers and was playing music from Earth. Kelly Brooks, one of the nurses, was treating a man who had been injured during the day's construction work. Just a minor cut, she assured Jake. We're getting pretty good at this. At what? Living here, making it work. Making it home. Jake looked around at his people. They had turned a war zone into a community. The aliens had superior weapons, superior numbers, and superior technology. But the humans had something else entirely. They had decided this place belonged to them, and they were going to keep it no matter what it took. In his command post across town, the alien leader stared at reports from his subordinates with growing unease. These humans were not behaving like any enemy he had ever faced. They were not behaving like enemies at all. They were behaving like people who planned to stay. 3 weeks had passed since the alien invasion began, and Commander Vextar was starting to understand why his species had never encountered anything like these humans before. He stood in his command center, studying reports that made no sense, according to everything he knew about warfare. Sir, they have turned the destroyed buildings into some kind of network, reported his lieutenant, Kralvon. Our sensors show tunnels connecting almost every structure in the settlement. They move through them like insects in a hive. Vextar examined the tactical display. The humans had indeed created something remarkable from the ruins of their colony. What should have been scattered debris had become an interconnected fortress. But that was not the strangest part. What about the other reports, he asked. Kralvon hesitated. Sir, they appear to be improving the area. Our scouts report gardens, recreational spaces, and what can only be described as artwork painted on the walls of destroyed buildings. Meanwhile, in the human settlement, Danny Ross was having the time of his life. The former Marine had transformed the colony's security operations into something that would have impressed his old drill sergeants. He crouched behind a barricade made from mining equipment, watching alien patrols through a scope. Jake, you need to see this, he called to the administrator, who was crawling through one of the many tunnels they had dug between buildings. Jake emerged from the tunnel, brushing dirt from his clothes. The tunnel system had been Amy Carter's idea, inspired by stories she told the children about underground cities. Now it allowed the colonists to move safely throughout their settlement, without being seen by alien sensors. What is it? Jake asked. Danny pointed toward the alien patrol. Watch their body language. See how they keep looking over their shoulders? They're nervous. These are supposed to be elite soldiers, but they're acting like they're afraid of us. Jake watched the alien patrol move cautiously down what used to be Main Street. The soldiers did indeed seem jumpy, spinning around at every small sound. It was hard to believe these were the same confident warriors who had landed 3 weeks ago. Can you blame them? Jake said. Yesterday, Pete's crew made those mining lasers sing the colony anthem. I'd be nervous too. Pete Garcia had become something of a legend among the colonists. The mining foreman had not only figured out how to convert industrial equipment into weapons, but he had also programmed them to play music during the conversion process. The result was a series of defensive installations that could cut through alien armor while playing cheerful Earth songs. Dr. Lisa Wong emerged from a nearby tunnel entrance, medical bag in hand. Jake, I need to show you something in the hospital. They made their way through the tunnels to what had once been the Colony Medical Center. Lisa had transformed the damaged building into something that looked more like a community center than a hospital. The basement levels had become a fully functional medical facility, but the upper floors now served multiple purposes. Look at this, Lisa said, leading them to what used to be the children's ward. The room had been converted into a classroom where Amy Carter was teaching a group of children and several adults. But instead of normal lessons, she was teaching tactical planning, basic engineering, and alien language recognition. The children seemed to find it all fascinating. Amy's been working with some of the adults who have technical backgrounds, Lisa explained. They're teaching the kids everything from electronics to military strategy. The children think it's the best school they've ever attended. One of the students, a 10-year-old girl named Emma, looked up from her work. Mrs. Carter, I think I figured out how the alien communicators work. Can we try to listen to their radio signals? Amy smiled. That's a great idea, Emma. Why don't you work with Mr. Butler on that project? Frank Butler had set up a workshop in the former pharmacy, where he spent his days studying captured alien technology. His workspace looked like a combination of a mechanic's garage and a scientist's laboratory. Pieces of alien equipment covered every surface, and Frank moved between them, with the focused attention of someone solving fascinating puzzles. The thing is, Frank explained to Jake, their technology isn't really better than ours. It's just different. They use different materials and different approaches, but the basic science is the same. I've already figured out how to power their weapons with our generators. Jake looked at the hybrid devices Frank had created. Human mining equipment merged with alien components, creating tools that served both practical and defensive purposes. One device appeared to be a combination of a construction laser and an alien shield generator. What does it do? Jake asked. It cuts through rock and metal for construction work, but it can also project a defensive barrier if we're under attack. I call it a builder defender. Carlos Rivera appeared in the doorway, dirt under his fingernails and a satisfied smile on his face. Frank, I could use one of those for the new garden project. The botanist had become obsessed with transforming the bombed areas of the colony into green spaces. What had started as planting tomatoes in a crater had expanded into an ambitious project to create parks throughout the settlement. Somehow he had managed to make plants grow in soil mixed with alien weapon residue. The aliens keep staring at the gardens, Carlos reported. I think they've never seen anything like it. Yesterday, one of their soldiers stood at the edge of the tomato patch for 20 minutes, just watching the plants grow. Maria Santos had expanded her cooking operations as well. The colony kitchen now operated from multiple locations, serving hot meals to work crews throughout the settlement. She had somehow managed to create a menu that included both earth foods and edible local plants that Carlos had identified. People work better when they're well fed, Maria explained to Jake as she laded soup into containers. And it gives everyone something to look forward to. Plus, the smell of cooking food makes this place feel more like home. That evening, Jake climbed to what used to be the colony's observation deck. The structure had been damaged in the initial bombing, but the colonists had repaired it and turned it into a combination watchtower and social gathering place. From there, he could see the entire settlement spread out below him. What he saw amazed him. Despite being under occupation by hostile aliens, his people had created something beautiful. Gardens grew between defensive positions. Children played games in areas that doubled as training grounds. Work crews sang songs while they built fortifications that looked more like community art projects than military installations. In the distance, he could see the alien command post. Even from this far away, he could tell that the occupying forces were having problems. Their patrols moved with less confidence than before. Their vehicles stayed closer to their base. Most telling of all, they had stopped trying to expand their control over the settlement. Danny Ross joined him on the observation deck, carrying 2 cups of coffee that Maria had somehow managed to brew. "They're scared of us," Danny said, stating what they both knew. "I don't understand it," Jake replied. "They have better weapons, more soldiers, superior technology. Why are they afraid?" Danny was quiet for a moment, watching children chase each other through the gardens below. "Because we're not acting like victims, we're acting like people who belong here, and I think that's something they've never seen before." In his command post, Commander Vexitar was reaching the same conclusion. His warriors were elite soldiers, trained from birth for conquest and victory, but they had never faced an enemy that treated invasion like a home improvement project. For the first time in his military career, Vexitar was considering requesting reinforcements, not because the humans were winning the battle, but because his own soldiers were starting to ask questions he could not answer. Questions like why the humans seemed happier now than they had before the invasion began. Commander Vexitar stared at the report in his hands with growing disbelief. In 30 years of military service, he had never encountered anything like this situation. The report detailed something that should have been impossible according to every military manual ever written. His soldiers were deserting, not fleeing in terror or retreating in defeat, but simply walking away from their posts and refusing to fight. Some had even been found sitting with human civilians, sharing meals, and attempting to communicate. "Sir, we have another incident," Lieutenant Kralvon reported nervously. "Squad leader Zethka was found in the human settlement yesterday evening. He claims he was not captured. He says he went there voluntarily." "Voluntarily?" Vexitar's voice carried the kind of authority that had made enemy commanders surrender without firing a shot. What possible reason could he have? He said the humans invited him to something they call a barbecue. 2 days earlier, Maria Santos had made an announcement that surprised even the other colonists. Standing in the settlement's main square, she declared that it was time for what she called the Great Barbecue. The idea was simple but bold. Cook a massive feast and invite everyone, including the alien soldiers. "Are you insane?" Danny Ross had asked her. "They're trying to conquer us." Maria shrugged in the way that had made her famous throughout the colony. "They look hungry and scared. Maybe what they need is a good meal and some company." Jake Morrison had learned not to argue with Maria when she got an idea in her head. Besides, he was curious to see what would happen. The colonists had spent 2 months proving that normal rules did not apply to their situation. Why should this be any different? The preparation took 3 days. Frank Butler rigged up massive grills using mining equipment and alien power sources. Carlos Rivera provided fresh vegetables from his impossible gardens. Amy Carter organized the children into teams responsible for setting up tables and decorations. Even Dr. Lisa Wong contributed by ensuring the food would be safe for both human and alien consumption. The barbecue was set up in the exact center of the settlement, equidistant from human and alien positions. Long tables were arranged in a circle around the grills, with enough seating for several hundred people. Someone had strung lights between the damaged buildings, creating a festive atmosphere that seemed to ignore the reality of their situation. On the appointed evening, the humans gathered as planned. What surprised everyone was that several alien soldiers appeared at the edge of the square, drawn by the smells and sounds of the celebration. Squad leader Zethka was the first to approach. He was young for a Zelhari warrior and had been part of the occupation force since the beginning. Unlike his companions, he walked slowly toward the humans with his weapon lowered. "Welcome," Maria called out in accented but understandable Zelhari language. Amy Carter had been teaching basic alien phrases to anyone who was interested. "Please sit. Eat." Zethka hesitated for a moment, then removed his helmet and sat at one of the tables. Within minutes, he was surrounded by curious humans offering him food and attempting conversation. The other alien soldiers watched from a distance, clearly torn between duty and curiosity. Jake found himself sitting across from the young Zelhari warrior, attempting to communicate through a mixture of gestures, broken alien words, and the universal language of shared food. "Why do you fight us?" Jake asked. using one of the phrases Amy had taught him. Zethka was quiet for a long time, chewing thoughtfully on what Carlos assured everyone was perfectly safe alien-friendly barbecue. Finally, he spoke in broken human language. Orders. Always. Orders. Fight. Conquer. Move to next world. Always moving. Where is home? Jake asked. The question seemed to puzzle the alien soldier. He looked around at the humans celebrating in their damaged settlement, at the gardens growing between defensive positions, at the children playing games while their parents worked on endless improvement projects. Home. Zethka repeated the word as if he had never heard it before. Over the following days, more alien soldiers began visiting the human settlement during their off-duty hours. They came cautiously at first, but with growing confidence as they realized the humans genuinely welcomed them. Frank Butler set up a translation device that made communication easier, and soon regular conversations were taking place between the two species. The conversations revealed something that shocked the humans. The Zelhari Empire had been conquering worlds for so long that most of their soldiers had never lived anywhere permanently. They moved from conquest to conquest, sleeping in temporary barracks and eating rations from supply ships. The concept of making a place better simply because you lived there was completely foreign to them. We take world, extract resources, move on, explained Zethka during one of his regular visits to Carlos's garden. World becomes empty, but we already gone. Carlos showed him how to plant seeds and tend growing things. But don't you want to see what grows? Never stay long enough to see. Amy Carter began teaching basic human customs to any alien soldiers who were interested. She found them surprisingly eager students, fascinated by concepts like home improvement, community celebrations, and long-term planning. The idea that people could make a place better over time, rather than simply extracting what they needed and moving on, seemed to captivate them. Commander Vexitar watched these developments with growing alarm. His carefully disciplined military force was being corrupted by human influence. Worse, the corruption seemed to be spreading. Soldiers who had visited the human settlement returned to their posts, asking uncomfortable questions about Zelhari military doctrine. "Sir, the men are requesting permission to set up recreational areas in our camp," reported Lieutenant Kralvon. "They want to create what they call gathering spaces, like the humans have." "Absolutely not," Vextar replied firmly. "We are warriors, not colonists." But even as he spoke, Vextar could see changes in his own camp. Soldiers were taking longer breaks, talking more among themselves, and showing less enthusiasm for routine patrols. Some had even begun decorating their barracks with small personal items, something that would have been unthinkable in the Zelhari military just months before. The breaking point came when several of his junior officers approached him with a formal request. They wanted to establish permanent diplomatic relations with the human settlement and explore the possibility of joint colonization efforts. Joint colonization? Vextar could barely believe what he was hearing. "We are conquerors, not diplomats. Our mission is to secure this world for the Empire." "But sir," one of the officers replied, "what if there is a better way?" That night, Vextar walked alone through his camp, observing his soldiers. What he saw disturbed him more than any military defeat ever could. His warriors were laughing, they were decorating their living spaces. They were planning projects that would take weeks or months to complete, as if they expected to stay in one place for an extended period. They were acting like the humans. In the distance, he could see the lights of the human settlement. Even at this hour, there was activity there. People working on construction projects, tending gardens, children playing in areas that had been bomb craters just 2 months ago. The humans had taken destruction and turned it into creation. For the first time since joining the Zelhari military, Commander Vextar found himself questioning everything he had been taught about conquest and victory. The humans had not defeated his forces through superior firepower or tactical brilliance. They had done something far more dangerous. They had shown his soldiers what it meant to have a home. The next morning brought news that would change everything. Zelhari High Command had grown tired of waiting for Vextar's victory report. They were sending the extinction fleet to glass the entire planet and eliminate both the human problem and what they viewed as Vextar's failed command. The message was clear. If the humans could not be conquered quickly, they would be eliminated, completely. Vextar read the orders with a growing sense of dread. He looked out at his camp where Zelhari soldiers were working alongside human volunteers on some kind of construction project. He thought about Zethka, who had asked permission to help Carlos plant a new section of garden. For 30 years, Vextar had followed orders without question. But as he watched a group of human children teaching alien soldiers how to play some Earth game, he realized that some things were more important than orders. Some things were worth protecting, even from your own side. The alarm that woke everyone in the settlement was not the usual attack warning. This one was different, urgent in a way that made Jake Morrison's blood run cold. He found Commander Vextar waiting for him in what used to be the colony's meeting hall, the alien leader's expression grim. "The extinction fleet arrives in 6 hours," Vextar said without ceremony. 12 ships designed for planetary destruction. They will not attempt conquest. They will simply eliminate everything. Jake stared at the alien commander who had become something impossible to define. Not quite an ally, not exactly a friend, but no longer an enemy either. Around them, humans and Zelhari worked together, preparing defenses that everyone knew would not be enough. "Why are you telling me this?" Jake asked. "Because in 2 months your people have taught my soldiers something my species forgot centuries ago. They have learned what it means to want to protect something instead of simply taking it." Sub-Commander Kethran, who had been working with Frank Butler on defensive systems, approached them with urgency. "The hybrid shields are ready, but they will not stop extinction-class weapons. We need a different solution." Over the past weeks, the cooperation between humans and Zelhari had produced remarkable innovations. Frank Butler's workshop had become a joint research facility, where human creativity combined with alien technology to create devices neither species could have built alone. But planetary destruction weapons were beyond anything they could counter. "Amy." Carter burst into the room with a group of children and young Zelhari soldiers. "Jake, we have an idea. It's crazy, but it might work." "What kind of idea?" 10-year-old Emma, who had become the unofficial leader of the Human-Alien Youth Cooperation Project, stepped forward. "What if we don't try to stop them? What if we show them instead?" Jake looked confused, but Amy smiled with the expression she wore when her students discovered something important. "Tell him the plan, Emma. The extinction fleet is coming to destroy us because we're different, right? Because humans and Zelhari working together is something new and scary. But what if we could show them that different isn't dangerous? What if we could prove that what we built here is better than what they have?" Dr. Lisa Wong entered the conversation with Kelly Brooks and several other colonists. "The children have been talking to the young Zelhari soldiers. They've learned something important about the extinction fleet." Zethka, who had become a regular presence in the settlement, spoke up in his improving human language. "Extinction fleet crews live on ships always, never on planets. They destroy worlds but never see what they destroy up close." "So they've never seen what we've built here," Jake realized. "They don't know what they're planning to eliminate." Carlos Rivera appeared with dirt on his hands and excitement in his eyes. "Jake, what if we invited them down? What if we showed them the gardens, the community spaces, the workshops where our people work together? You want to invite the extinction fleet to a barbecue?" Jake asked incredulously. Maria Santos, who had been listening from the doorway, grinned. "I'll start preparing food for a few thousand extra guests." The plan that emerged was audacious, even by the standards of people who had turned an alien invasion into a community-building project. Instead of hiding or fighting, they would broadcast an invitation to the extinction fleet. They would ask the crews to come down and see what they were planning to destroy. Frank Butler and the joint technology teams worked frantically to create a communication system powerful enough to reach the incoming fleet. Pete Garcia organized work crews to prepare landing areas. Amy Carter coached everyone in basic diplomatic protocols, while her students created visual presentations showing the colony's transformation. "This is insane. Danny Ross muttered as he helped set up defensive positions that were designed to protect visitors rather than repel them. "We're planning to welcome the people who came here to kill us all." "It's only insane if it doesn't work," Jake replied, watching human and Zelhari children work together to decorate the settlement with welcome banners in both languages. When the extinction fleet arrived, their response to the invitation was exactly what Commander Vextar had predicted: confusion, suspicion, and eventually curiosity. The fleet commander, a veteran warrior named Thakmor, initially refused all communication. But as reports from his scouts described what they were seeing in the settlement below, his resolve began to waver. "Sir, the reports are unusual," his lieutenant reported. "The surface shows signs of extensive military activity, but also signs of long-term habitation and improvement. We are detecting agriculture, construction projects, and what appears to be recreational facilities. And the enemy forces? That's the strange part, sir. We're detecting both human and Zelhari life signs working in cooperation throughout the settlement. It appears that significant portions of Commander Vextar's forces have integrated with the human population." Thakmor had commanded extinction operations on 17 worlds. He had seen desperate last stands, futile resistance movements, and pathetic attempts at negotiation. He had never seen anything like this. The final factor that changed his mind was a message from the settlement, not a plea for mercy or an offer of surrender, but a simple invitation recorded by the children of both species together. "Hello," said Emma, standing next to a young Zelhari soldier who had learned to speak human words. "We know you came here to destroy our home, but before you do, would you like to see what we built? We think you might find it interesting." 2 hours later, the first shuttles from the extinction fleet landed in the settlement's main square. Thakmor and his senior officers emerged to find themselves surrounded by the most impossible sight in Zelhari military history. Humans and Zelhari were working together, not as conquerors and conquered, not as masters and slaves, but as partners in a joint effort to make their shared space better. Gardens grew where battles had been fought. Children of both species played together while adults collaborated on construction projects that served both practical and aesthetic purposes. Commander Thakmor, Jake Morrison stepped forward with a formal greeting in Zelhari language. "Welcome to our home. Would you like a tour?" The tour lasted 6 hours. Thakmor and his officers were shown the hybrid technology workshops, the integrated defense systems, the joint cultural exchange programs, and the community spaces where both species gathered for meals and recreation. They saw art created by human and Zelhari artists working together, heard music that combined the musical traditions of both civilizations, and witnessed children learning lessons that drew from the knowledge of two worlds. "This is not conquest," Thakmor finally said to Commander Vextar as they stood in Carlos Rivera's impossible garden. "This is not occupation. What is this?" "This is what happens when you stop taking and start building," Vextar replied. "This is what happens when you make a place home instead of just another battlefield." That evening, as the sun set over Kepler 442b, Fleet Commander Thakmor sent a message to Zelhari High Command that would be remembered for generations. "Recommend immediate suspension of extinction operations. Human settlement represents no threat to Zelhari security. Instead, recommend establishment of joint colonization program. These beings possess knowledge of permanent habitation and community building that could benefit the Empire. Request permission to study their methods and explore possibilities for cooperation. Some of my crew are requesting assignment to surface operations. I may join them." 6 months later, Kepler 442b had become something unprecedented in galactic history. A world where two species lived and worked together as equals, each contributing their strengths to build something neither could have created alone. The settlement had grown into a small city, with Zelhari families joining human families in creating a community that was truly home to both. Jake Morrison, now serving as the first human Zelhari joint administrator, stood in his office looking out at streets where children of both species played together, while their parents worked on projects that would benefit generations to come. The galaxy had learned something important from a small mining colony that refused to surrender. Sometimes the greatest victory comes not from defeating your enemies but from turning them into neighbors. And sometimes the most powerful weapon is simply showing others what it means to have a place worth protecting.